All right, we're recording.
We are so recording. Hey, look,
Yeah, we
we've
got
got people
several.
actually joining. That's
Yeah,
exciting. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this little webinar. We're going to try to keep it well under an hour for you and let you get about your lives here. And I'll let Kostya start up
the PowerPoint.
the
Yeah,
PowerPoint
the
because everybody loves
slides.
a PowerPoint.
Right, exactly.
Mhm.
But welcome. Today is, what's today? November
Yeah.
Fifth. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. November 5th,
Payday.
2025.
Can we reduce
Yes,
those
of course.
people? Um, Hi, I am delighted that you're here. I'm Jane Price, and how come
We have to
my
do the initial one here.
okay from the Center for Teaching Excellence. I have with me.
My name is Kostya Kosenko. I work for the graduate school. I'm the ITA or International Teaching Assistant Program Manager.
Mhm. And we have in the background here, Erin, my coworker who will be monitoring the chat. I personally am really horrible at multitasking. So if you have anything that you want to add, comment on, or ask questions about, you are welcome to put things in the chat, and Erin will be watching that to let us know that we need to address something. And with that, I'm glad that we have people here to
Yes.
watch this. It'd be really a bummer if there were only two of you, but maybe that you would have some really personalized help here. How come my thing
Yeah, it doesn't like you.
doesn't like me anymore? We have this slightly scary graphic here of our topics ahead, but we did just do Halloween. And really, we have just two umbrella topics that we'll be going over, verbal items first, and then nonverbal items. So if you were here live, we would have, a little talk to your partner thing, but Zoom makes that really weird and awkward. And so I just want at the beginning here to you sort of think back when you very first came, if you were maybe somewhere before Salt Lake City, but arriving here in the United States. And what were your communication expectations at that time? And specifically, first, we're talking about verbal. So clearly, before you came, you'd taken some classes or something on what to expect. So, what are the differences you were anticipating? What were you prepared for? But surely there were also some things that were just a surprise to you that how come nobody told me this? This had been a lot easier. So, just for a few seconds, just kind of think back and on how you felt at that time. Okay, that's enough thinking. Takeaways from today, I'm not going to tell you the actual specific stuff because that's what we're going to be doing next. But really, what I want you to walk away is either validation of what you're already doing in your classes, to think, okay, I'm doing the right thing. I already had anticipated this. I know what to do. Or maybe if we bring up some topics that, you wish that you had known some of these strategies before you started your teaching that you may not have considered already. So we're going to start out with verbal formality, and I'm going to let you look at this map. I love this map. I know probably no surprises on here. The different states and what Americans think about the people from these states or what we associate with them. So, there's Utah, Mormon. Okay, that's to be expected. California is the big liberal state. I think all of these are completely accurate. I especially wanted to point out the state of New York over on the right side, not just Long Island and Manhattan, that section, but we do think of New York. The people from there are rude and they talk really, really fast. And I really think, eastern part of the United States, we think of as much faster talkers. Pretty formal, but they don't want to know you as a person. They just want to get down to business and get the business done. And then as you move further west and then out here, people start to talk slower and a little more kind of friendly, especially I think of the South as having the friendliest, we really want to be your best friend, and here's your coffee, and now we're best friends. And um, so to think about in your own culture, what is the level of formality? And how does that compare? Since we're here in Utah, I would say we're pretty neutral. We're not super formal, we're not super friendly. And our speed of talking should be a little more relaxed than it is in the East. So I'm gonna let Kostya kind of take over now and talk about these topics.
Right, so formalities, basically, if you're, and again, our presentation is meant for teaching assistants, anyone who is like, even if you're not a teaching assistant, this is a good way for you to
Life
review.
skill.
Yes, life skills, exactly. So
Mhm,
sometimes we encounter international students or people from other countries who want to, they want to be respectful, and so they want to be formal. And sometimes they are overly formal, or they
mhm,
accidentally they just mess it up.
mhm,
So let's talk about credentials. Credentials, it's like, using things like Mr., Miss, or Doctor something something.
mhm.
One of the most common mistakes that I encounter is when someone is overly formal by they want to use I don't know, doctor or something, and then they use my first name, right? So if you're using credentials, always use it with with their last name.
Yeah,
Right. So like, for
family.
example, but if you know they actually have those credentials, right? So like, you don't want to be like, hey, Dr. Jane. It's silly, right? Or Dr. Kostya, like it sounds silly. You want to use like you want to say Dr. Price or
Mhm,
something else, right?
mhm,
At the same time, sometimes people like literally use their last name, right? I don't want to be like, hey, Price.
mhm,
That just like, especially if you don't know them. Obviously, as a joke, I can say,
mhm,
hey, Price, but
mhm,
normally you don't want to do that. That just
mhm,
kind of silly.
mhm.
Um, the next example is good afternoon. I don't know why, but I hear this all the time with students. Again, I understand.
I guess we could give a little background that since
Yeah,
you sound like a native speaker.
well, that's too kind of you. Yeah, we should have said that we both have had experience teaching ESL, English as a second language. I'm actually from Ukraine, and Jane is originally from technically,
Oklahoma.
sure. So like, students from other countries, they want to be polite, they want to be formal, and they just go to their class or they go to their work meeting. They're like, good afternoon. Here's the secret. Nobody ever says good afternoon. Like, no, but unless, of course, you are, I don't know, the CEO of your company, and you're like addressing a couple hundred people,
Yeah,
sure. Or like
mhm,
you're giving I don't know, like a research presentation at some conference, sure. But normally you don't want to, like, nobody ever says good afternoon. You
mhm.
do say like in the morning, say hey morning or good morning, but
Yeah.
like even like good evening, nobody. But especially good afternoon.
Mhm,
Stop saying good afternoon. Nobody ever says it. But also you don't want to be overly informal because you're like, oh, well, a bunch of Americans are informal. I want to be like them, right? And be like, sup, bro? How's it hanging? Like no, like don't be. That's like the opposite of that. So we'll
uh-huh.
talk about like some strategies or some good phrases that you can use.
Mhm.
Another one, and then
So, yeah, so this one is not totally related to necessarily verbal
yeah,
communication, but especially we just wanted to throw this in for an email or a phone call. How to deal with this. Go ahead.
yeah. So I get this all the time. Again, here's to make it super clear. When you say I am, that means you are introducing yourself to someone for the first time. You've never met them.
Mm-hmm.
This is when you're trying to remind someone who you've already met.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you're emailing someone, like someone you've already emailed before, if you say I am so and so, they'll be like, wait, why are they saying I am? I've already met them. So
Mm-hmm.
again, I am, that means
Mm-hmm.
this is the first time you're meeting them, you've never talked to them before. If you
Mm-hmm.
say it's just a reminder so they know
Mm-hmm.
who you are, but don't say I am when you've already met them. It just
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense.
Or on the phone,
Yeah.
that's what you would say first is this is blah
Mm-hmm.
blah blah. Although today everybody looks at their phone and they know who's calling now.
Mm-hmm.
Our general suggestion on credentials and addressing people is you're always forgiven to be too formal. So it's if you're in doubt on pretty much everything in this whole presentation, go more formal until somebody tells you to, just call me Jane.
So between what's up, bro, and good afternoon, go with good afternoon. It's less awkward.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We did have a question in the
Uh-huh.
comments here. Any
Sure.
alternative for good afternoon? Like, what's a good alternative there?
Um,
Hi.
that's a great question. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, we hadn't thought that through.
Oh, well, okay. So Aaron, you mentioned that you're from Willard earlier
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
And so like my in-laws, they all say hello. Nobody ever says hi. And I hate the word hello, especially if you know someone. So I would say what Jane suggested, like you can say hi. You'll also notice that, like for example, I say hi to my boss, even though she's, above me, obviously. So hello is more like, I don't know.
Well, okay, I'm just going to break in here because when we started this Zoom thing, the first thing I think I probably said is hello, everyone, or hi, everyone.
Mhm.
And so that is my intuitive as a native speaker. My answer would just be to say hello or hi.
That's the safest.
And
Fine.
Coach Jib thinks everything through completely more than I do. And Aaron, did you have something to throw in there?
Oh, I was just gonna say I do the same thing. Sometimes I'll say, "How are you doing?" or something like that.
Yeah.
You know,
hmm
some
But
cat.
yeah, and until Kostya brought it up, I had never really thought about it. But yeah, we do always say good morning. We can say good night, and then we skip everything in
Yeah,
between.
don't say good evening.
Mhm.
Unless you're like hosting a show, a fancy show, be like,
Yeah.
good evening, ladies.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Don't,
I associate it
that's
with ladies and gentlemen.
the only exception. The great questions.
Mhm. Good.
All right. I wanted to talk a little bit about personal pronouns. So, like in Canvas, you can set your name and put your pronouns in there. You might get emails and the pronouns are down at the bottom in the signature, or even go to a meeting or something and somebody says, "Hi, I'm Jane Price. I use she, her pronouns." So if you've been wondering, what is the deal? What is the deal with Americans and their pronouns? Because I really have the feeling that this is not a global trend, that it really is the United States. And it's just you're showing respect for the person to show whatever you want to refer to yourself as, that is what I'm going to do because it's your decision and I'm going to respect your decision. It is really hard. This is very much a generational thing. So my 23-year-old daughter, she can say they, them. She doesn't give it any thought. Her friends don't think about it, whatever. It's easy for them. And I really have this sense that the older the person who is talking, the harder it is for them to do this. So if you find yourself that you're talking to someone, they want you to refer to them as they or them, and if you're using the wrong pronoun, just give a quick apology. Sorry, I forgot. And I promise that the person that you're talking to will not make a big deal out of it. They'll just be glad that you said something and they're used to it. They've heard it before, they know. So just give a quick apology, move on, and don't make a big deal. Don't think about it later of why did I do that? I made a mistake. And, just go on with your life. Everybody's learning to do the right thing. But what we don't want you to do is just pretend like that this is not an issue and that you can call the person whatever you think they should be called.
I just thought of something.
Mhm.
So like I have a name that ends with the ya sound. So like sometimes people are like, wait, is that if there's no picture and your
Mhm.
name, you might be coming from a country where it's like, wait, is this what kind of
Yeah, male or female
right,
or,
or like so
whatever. Yeah.
you're not necessarily being political or anything, but it's always good to like clarify,
Mhm.
and it's easy for them, especially if they don't know you and they want to be respectful. And if they misgender you, like I've had so many emails where they say like, "Hello, Miss
Yeah.
Kasenko." I'm like,
Mm.
"Nice to meet you." So it's like it's good for them, but when I know someone's if it's you can't tell based on their name, it's a really great way to.
Well, and especially if you have, I mean, let's face it, Chinese names. I mean, I used to teach in Korea, so I can tell, what the pronoun probably should be for Korean names. But This is also very helpful for you as an international instructor to have your pronouns like in an email or something to kind of take that whole issue out. So that people who have not already met you will already know which pronouns to be using for you. Okay.
I have to do this. It's kind of silly. I know.
Cultural references is probably what you were expecting in this workshop. Our main recommendation, don't pretend to get cultural references if you don't get them. You're forgiven. You know, if you didn't grow up here in Salt Lake City, then how would you be expected to know? So if you're teaching and a student makes some reference to something, you just think, you know, I don't know who Mr. Rogers was. You can ask for clarification, and that's fine. And also use it as a teaching moment that maybe your student that you're talking to or whoever has never really given a lot of thought to why would I expect this person to know this reference? And it kind of can open their eyes to the world is a bigger
Mhm.
place than what I grew up with. So again, just say I don't, just tell them I don't know what you're referring to. And then I wanted Kostya to kind of talk about this next point here, but
It's okay. It's actually a good idea to remind Americans that not everyone is aware of these cultural references.
what the world is
Right.
not just the United States.
So like you mentioned Salt Lake City, right? So like, we do recommend like at least try and keep track of or be aware of, if you're really going to be living in Utah, if you are living in Utah, like one cultural reference is like that we've hosted the Olympics in 2002, right? So
Mhm.
like people might be like, oh, we're hosting the Olympics again. And that's a simple thing, right? That's like, it could be something political, right? So like we're living in a red state or we're living in a purple or blue state, things like that. Those are very basic. So again, people will definitely forgive you. They're like, oh, well, they're from another country. And
Mhm.
it's good for them to know that not everybody knows this stuff. But at the same time, try to be aware of these things. It'll help you with like, oh, that's what they're talking about.
Mhm.
And if you don't, you can ask them. Like,
Mhm.
it's fine to ask.
Everybody likes to talk about their
Oh,
culture.
absolutely.
They're happy to explain it. Here's just some kind of random communication tips. Um, to remember to show that you're engaged with your speaker and to give them some cues that you are listening and paying attention. So by fillers, we mean things like and you can think back in your own language. What do you say often? Just to show that you're paying attention.
Right.
And we encourage you to do that with your students or whoever you're talking to. In my experience as an ESL teacher, I often find that when I ask my students to repeat something or clarify something, that they freak out that their English is bad and it's something wrong with their grammar or they use the wrong vocabulary word or something like that. When it could be, since I have 2 hearing aids here, it could be I just didn't hear you. And I think that's actually more often the case. Especially the volume. I know Kostya has some comments on that.
Yeah, it's like I mean, we talk about stereotypes at the beginning. I think with each state has their own stereotype, but the overall should be like loud, right? So Americans are known to be super loud.
What?
So then when you're like, I don't know, when you see like again, no offense to Jane,
I'm
right?
offended.
You see like Americans traveling overseas and there's just like like they're using the public transit and like the whole train can hear these two people talking to each other. That's what they're used to. And you might be like using your normal voice from like your culture, but for them that's quiet. So
Mhm.
don't automatically assume that there's something wrong with your grammar. And then then you paraphrase it. Again, it's quiet. And they just wait. So now there's like a whole new question, but they still don't understand you. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I'm just gonna give up.
Yeah.
Just repeat it, but louder.
Yeah, that's the main thing is say exactly what you just said. Try it louder. Don't change anything except the volume and see if that works. We also wanted to say something about humor because, I think we're funny.
Absolutely.
We love
We
humor.
should be like stand-up comedians. Honestly.
Well, I mean, we like the general, not just me,
No,
the
I
two
think
of
it's just the two of us, to be honest.
Humor to Americans makes you a real person, a relatable person. This is even, if you have to make some kind of video or something for your course or for a conference you're presenting at or whatever, to put your personality in, it makes people relate to you better and feel like they're part of your team. Of course, though, humor doesn't always translate. So I think you've probably been in those situations where you thought you were being funny and like nobody got it. And so we can't really help you there. But to not be afraid to put some personality, put some humor. And again, this absolutely depends on the level of the formality of the situation with your students. After you've kind of been around them for a while, they will expect you to, have a little bit of humor of some sort. But again, if you are doing a formal presentation, to maybe not have so much humor incorporated.
We do have a question in the chat.
Huh?
It says whichever would be best. What would be the best way to call a professor's name that you're not very familiar with? Their first name or professor and their last name? And this would be for in-person conversations.
Mm-hmm. So my suggestion would be to say professor last name. And then if they want you to call them something else, they'll say that. So, I know that you are all doing higher ed. You're far beyond a lot of the students that I used to teach, but a lot of my students would just call me teacher, and like, that's horrible, right? 'Cause then I just call you student. Yes, student.
Yeah, don't do that.
And so what I get often, because I don't have a doctorate, so I'm not Dr. Price, but I get a lot of emails that start out Dr. Price. And these are not my, international students, this is just anybody. Because the default is be more formal than maybe is the case. But then I come back and just say, just call me Jane, is fine. And so that's my suggestion, is go formal, professor, last name, and then see what they respond with.
And I was gonna add, so I'm also a doctoral student myself, so I have my advisor. He always says like, "Oh, just call me by my first name." I'm like, "That's not happening." Like, it's just even though we're like actually kind of very similar in pretty much the same age, but I wouldn't honestly, that's me personally. So I always refer to my professor or advisor, Doctor so and so, like doctor last name. But maybe with my classmates, I could talk, I could refer to that person by their first name, but not in their face or via email.
Mhm. And to be clear, when Coach Joe was pointing at me and saying we're the same age, he's not pointing at me.
Oh, I didn't even think about it. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're exactly the same age, you can tell.
Oops, sorry.
Hey.
Yeah, so the next subtopic is silence. As we mentioned, Americans are, well, again, no, not all of them, but like they are known to be loud. So, but that also means they can get very uncomfortable with silence.
Mhm.
So, and you probably have experienced this to some degree, like whether you have taught a class or you've taken a class, like when no one is saying anything like this, it's just weird, right? So it's like you can just hear the water in the pipes. So it's like it just Americans in general are not very comfortable with silence. So like somebody has to say something. So in some of these examples on the slides, you can see that like in Western cultures, silence technically, usually means like awkwardness or maybe we have like an argument, right? So so it's like it's a little bit contentious. In like other cultures, like Latin cultures, they can not only be loud, but they can also interrupt each other, and that's fine. Um, Again, in some other ones, it depends on where you come from. But let's say just be aware that whether you are teaching in class and your students might be American, probably most of them will be American, but there might be some that are not. So there are different levels of tolerating silence, but Americans are in general they will probably say something. You had a really good example.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it. So like when Zoom became a thing during the
Mhm.
pandemic, one of the worst things about Zoom is that there might be a silence and then Americans freak out. Somebody's got to say something to fill that silence because we're just not very good at it. So when I'm teaching just general workshops on pedagogy in the classroom, then it's very common for an American professor to say, question, question, question. And they look out, and if there's more than 1 or 2 seconds of silence, it's always the same extrovert student who says something because they just can't stand to have that silence. Half the class then has the reaction of, this idiot always jumps in and says something. I have a better thought, but I didn't want to say anything because I knew he would say something. So one of my tips then is, if you're going to ask an open-ended question, to actually tell the students, I'll give you a few seconds to think about that, and then somebody can volunteer to answer. I don't recommend that you cold call, meaning just pick somebody and ask them because they're always the quiet type, because it's very possible that they've been paying attention for the entire class. They're really on top of things. And then 10 seconds ago, they just thought, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to pick up my kid after, oh, wait, I didn't. And so they're distracted, and then you cold call them, what do you think about this? And they, and they have to be on the spot and say, I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. So that's not fair. But sometimes I even have, instructors who are not comfortable with silence to just actually physically practice. Ask a question and then look around and say, I'll give you 5 seconds. And Elena has a question, and you can go ahead and ask it. But just to finish up what I was saying, to just practice looking around the room and letting there be that awkward silence, and then say, okay, now we can open this up for comments. Yes, Elena, what's your question?
What if after the 5 seconds, no answer is coming, and 10 seconds and 15 seconds? How do I deal with that? How do I smoothly move the conversation? Like, forget about it. Never mind.
So are you saying like, how long should you have to wait until you actually just jump in yourself as the instructor and just take off? Because
Yes.
I think 15 seconds is ridiculous. Like, nobody wants to sit there that long. So I don't have the suggestion of you just stand there until somebody says something to encourage them. So wait a few seconds, 5 seconds or so, and then actually say, okay, now we'll open up the time. And just, it's very, very rare that even if you say, okay, does anybody have a comment on this, that nobody's going to jump in after you've waited for 5 seconds.
Unless you're teaching an ESL class.
I
Well,
have
I'm
a-
assuming they're not teaching
know, I
in
know.
ESL.
But also, like, you could also think about, like, depending on the class, you might be asking a very hard question. You can even like say, this is like a hard question. Take your time to think about it.
And another thing you can do is actually have them talk to somebody who's next to them and let them sort of start at least, kind of voicing that. They'll have something to say if they're just doing one-on-one with the person next to them.
Yeah.
And then they might be more comfortable if you say, okay, does anybody want to share what you just talked about? And so that's another, way to get
In,
around.
in Zoom, it's super awkward. Well,
Yeah.
when all the screens are black and I'm asking the question just to the void and no answer ever.
So that is exactly why we don't do that in these. So this is why I have Aaron to be in the background and ask these things, and why at the beginning of this presentation, when I said, just think about it yourselves, that we didn't go through that awkward, okay, now we're gonna wait for somebody to share their experience, because exactly what you're saying, then maybe nobody wants to share, and then we're all like, okay, well, that didn't work, so move on. So my suggestion is to kind of take that out of the situation. If you want them to talk, either say you can put your stuff in the chat and we'll have somebody, you know, monitoring that, or put them in breakout rooms where there's just a few of them together and they don't really have a choice and you're not really putting them on the spot, the whole entire group.
And we also have another student with a question. Is it you?
Yvonne.
Yeah, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
So my question is, I had the situation where I asked the question, so we have like a group discussion or class discussion, and I prompt out like the discussion question, and the students were just like not moving, and literally after 15 seconds, they were not like having one person um responding, and I don't know like if picking out one of them is a good way, or I just have like a really low engagement for my class.
So a few responses to that. We have in fact done a workshop on this very topic of managing small group discussion kind of things. So if that's somewhere on the where could they?
Yeah, so on the ITAP's website, and we can put that in you'll see it in one of our last slides. You can go to resources, and under resources, we have links to our previous
Workshop, mhm.
workshops where we discussed this. But do we want to like give her
I mean, so, you know, here's just a few things. So is your question that they are in small groups and one group is kind of done and checked out, or what exactly is the question again? I can't remember.
It was
Students
just
are
like it was just like a class, like the whole class discussion, maybe like
Uh-huh.
at the beginning of the class.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of like a warm up, and
Uh-huh.
I prompt out like a question for students. For example, maybe like just sharing what did you do like during
Mhm.
the weekend or something like that,
Mm.
to just like warm up, or like a prompting out a like the
Mhm.
whole class discussion. I always have like always struggled with having students just like say something like during that.
Yeah, so at the beginning of class, I mean, having that kind of icebreaker thing is a terrific idea. And people are much more likely to just talk to somebody who's next to them or in a little small group. You're always going to have students that just they're there because they have to be there and they don't care when anybody else says. And so you can't, you know, police everybody. So if you have some of those students and they just don't want to join the group, you know, that's kind of more on them because they're not probably going to be getting as much out of the class in general anyway. But to, so related to this, not just an icebreakery thing, but if you have students in groups and one group is done in 10 seconds and they're just kind of checked out, that is part of your job, is to shark around and go up and just say, okay, so, you know, follow up with them and see how they're doing. And maybe one of the students really had more that they wanted to say, but then when everybody else gets out their phone and they're done, then they're like, okay, well, I guess we're finished. And they probably would really appreciate you coming up and just saying, okay, so how did you answer this question? Or tell me how you walked through this, coming up with whatever solution you did. And then, of course, in your large group, your whole classroom, you could always have them just share out. So at the beginning, just to tell them one person in your group, and then we'll report for your group. So the first thing your group needs to do is kind of decide who's going to be that spokesperson, so that nobody is made to do something suddenly that they weren't expecting. Like, hey, Kostya, tell us, you know what? He's like, I didn't know I was going to have to do this.
Okay. Thank you. That was helpful.
Okay. Didn't we already do our non-verbal? Didn't we?
No,
already
not
do
yet.
this? Okay.
Yeah.
So again, and we're just now up to this. So again, the same idea of thinking back. Now we're moving on to non-verbal things. So you had some expectations again before you came here, but now to think about the non-verbal kind of stuff. And these are, you know, the kind of messy. Some of these topics are overlapping. Is that verbal or non-verbal? But again, what were you prepared for that you anticipated would be different between your country and the United States? And then, you know, what things have you, since you've been here, nobody told me to expect this. And maybe we should kind of first think about what is nonverbal communication itself. So it's things like this, personal space. I bet you did think about this before you came, and that, you read some stuff or went to a workshop or whatever about this. So, as we know, most USA citizens grow up, they're not in Manhattan. They grow up out in the suburb or something in a single family house. They didn't grow up in an apartment, multifamily building. And especially because historically housing was so much cheaper in the United States than it is today.
It's the American dream right there.
Yeah. So here's Levittown, New York. Just outside of New York City, it's on Long Island. This is where my dad grew up. This was the first planned community where they have the same distance between all of the houses. So everybody's got their personal space. And that became the model for all the suburbs that later developed in the United States.
And this tells you like that, again, no offense, not only are Americans loud, they also love their personal space. You probably, I mean, this is not news, I would assume. You might be, or even me, I come from a culture where, it's, you don't have that much personal space and you have to be more comfortable with, crowded public transit, stuff like that. These are some, this is just a chart for you to kind of give you a general idea what would make an American uncomfortable or comfortable. Like, let's say you're doing a small group work or small group discussion, like, and you want to check what they're, check what they're doing, what they're working on. You don't want to be like too close. Even though you might be like, oh, I'm just looking at what you're writing, right? But in their head, they're like, oh, this is too close. Like, what? Don't touch me, right? So like, and there's multiple studies saying that like the United States is one of the most touch deprived cultures. Like, so just be careful.
Just said touch deprived, if you didn't hear what Kostya just said.
Oh.
Meaning, right, we don't touch enough.
Yeah, and then like so like because it's so close to like personal space, like when you are too close, then you're touching, and that might make some like whether you are a student or you're teaching students, just be aware of that.
So, I mean, my point really, yeah, the point here is we like some distance. So Kostya and I are old friends, and we can be on the Zoom call right here together. But I do remember hosted when I was teaching ESL in Oklahoma, and we had a dance for the students. And one of my students from El Salvador was talking to me, and I realized that, wow, this is getting louder and louder and louder. And I finally figured out I was kept backing away from him because I want that personal space until I had the speaker from the DJ right behind me. But it was just my instinct is, so we were like making this big circle around the room because he, kept getting closer and closer to me.
And notice how, like, obviously we're sitting right next to each other, but like typically you'll notice how Americans like to have like a seat in between them unless they absolutely have to sit next to each other. So what I'm saying is, let's say you're going into a classroom and someone is already sitting there and you sit right next to them. They might be like, what the, like, should I move away from them? Like, so, and if they move away from you, that's not because you smell bad. It's because they like their personal space.
We like
And it makes
personal
them feel,
space.
it's
Mhm.
probably like, it's kind of rude to move away from someone, but at
Mhm.
least it's less comfortable than sitting right next to someone.
Mhm.
But yeah, so these are some quick examples of some of the common hand gestures that are totally okay in the US, but in some cultures they might be misconstrued as something else. So just be careful. Obviously, if you are, let's say, a TA or an art, well, if you're a TA here, you most likely your students will be Americans. But if you have like other students from other cultures, just be aware that some of, like things like pointing, right? So like that could be rude at, it's sometimes it's really suggested like if you can use your hand like, oh, here's the whiteboard, but like pointing could be rude. There's so many things in different cultures that could be rude that are okay here but not okay in other. It could be almost offensive, so just be aware of that you don't want to even accidentally offend a student of yours.
Well, and the point on this, yes, is that these gestures are okay in the United States. The thumbs up and the pointing, we're fine with that. In the title up here, we have eye contact. So,
that's right.
in a lot of cultures that it's a power thing, who's making the eye contact. And the United States, we just want you to have eye contact. Eye contact means you're paying attention, which is why for someone like me who is autistic, it's very hard to remember to always do this, because if I'm not looking at the person in their eyes, they think that I'm dismissing and I'm
Yeah.
not paying attention, which is why I especially love to do Zoom stuff, because I can look at this little green dot up there and you think I'm looking right at you, but I'm not.
But also like don't make it too long, because it's like, it could be like a sensitive thing, like if you're, looking at someone,
Yeah.
if it's too long. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, this one. I mean, you probably knew this, but we just don't do this in the United States, so.
I remember, this is a quick example, when I went to a party with a bunch of people from Brazil, and they were like kissing me on the cheeks, not once, not like twice, but like three, like I'm like,
We don't know what to do. We're
Like-
just like, I don't know what's
like,
happening.
do I know you? Why would you? I mean, people, I mean, if it's a close friend, of
Yeah.
course, but like that, obviously be aware of that. Don't, if you come from a culture where you touch a lot or kiss a lot, you do that to an American, that could be traumatizing.
Yeah, traumatized. I've never done this with my friends. No, we just don't. Better safe than sorry. Don't touch your students. Don't touch anybody until you are best friends or if it's your family. But especially in a course, just don't do it, and you keep yourself out of trouble.
I had a job interview one time, super quick, and then this person from the Middle East, he was like rubbing my back, and that could be totally normal in some cultures, but like, if you come from if it's it's a person that you don't know, if you're interviewing someone for something, or if it's like like what Jane said, like a student, don't rub their
Yeah,
back.
don't touch them.
Don't touch them. It's because then you might get in trouble. It's
Yeah.
just, even if you mean well,
Mhm.
that
Just
it's-
better safe than
exactly.
sorry. Better safe than sorry. Better safe than sorry.
Yeah. You want me to, yeah. So this one is a tricky one, and I always, get hesitant. So you might have noticed that Americans, in general, like especially like men, I'll just speak for men, they don't wear a lot of cologne. And in some cultures, it's like totally normal. Like I'm from Eastern Europe, and like men wear cologne all the time. And I remember coming here 13 years ago, and would like wear my cologne. People are like, "Woo, that's a strong smell." Right. I'm like, what? And then, so you have to be aware that, oftentimes,
Mhm.
and it's, some people might be allergic, some people might be,
Yeah, that's also the allergy thing now, is just don't do it.
but let's say if you're teaching in class, or I don't know, if you go to a job interview, don't overdo it. Maybe it's better to be on the safe side and maybe not wear a cologne, because sometimes it's, even though culturally you're like, oh, my hands are reaching towards
Mhm.
the my cologne, don't do it, because here they're just like not used to that.
Yeah.
Obviously you still want to like smell good, be fresh and like professional, but don't overdo it with cologne.
Mhm. And I think we're coming up on the
We're
end of
almost,
yeah,
we're
almost
almost
done.
done.
Punctuality, again, in the United States, this depends on the formality. So like, today, we just started the meeting at 1 o'clock, because this is kind of a formal situation. And very much punctuality is, depends on the formality. So parties or whatever, that's very loose. But American culture, we're not quite as strict as I think of, like German culture is very much on time. So we're a little bit more loose, but generally, punctual is the norm, is our go-to.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Visually, here's this prof dress codes. Again, it's better to be more formal than not formal enough. Today, I'm sure you've noticed tattoos, piercing, it's becoming less taboo. Again, though, I would suggest it's better to be too formal, and then you're just sure not to offend anybody. And again, this is very much a generational thing of my generation and older. We just don't have tattoos. Pirates have tattoos, and Your sailors have tattoos, but nobody else does. But you'll always be forgiven for being too formal, and you don't want to restrict your advancement in a job interview or something else based on how you look.
I feel like things are changing towards more acceptance, but
Mhm.
in general, it's again like just with your language, with your behavior, like it's better to be a little bit more formal just to be on the safe side.
Mhm. Yeah, you can tell that this is an AI generated image because his fingers, are those possible? What is up with those
You
fingers?
have like one separate finger that is covering.
It's got like 13
Yeah.
digits here. And this is especially like in a Zoom background. I want you to have some personality, and it's okay if you're in your house and, even if your dog comes in, great, they have a dog, but your credibility is also on the line. So, don't have some toys behind you or something that is going to make you look really not professional. So there's some kind of balance between having your personality in it, but also that you are a professional. And of course, the more formal the situation, the more formal your background should be. We put in some videos. I guess we should put the slides in the chat, would probably be a smart idea because they're not going to be able to use these
True.
resources otherwise.
True, but we are gonna, so like I said, if you go to, and I should just remember off the top of my head, if you go to the ITA, you can just Google ITA graduate school. If you go to the resources, that's where we're gonna keep all the recordings for these workshops.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
Let's,
thank you. You can stop share.
yep. All right. And you can also, yeah, these are our websites and our emails if you'd like to contact us.
Mhm. Okay, anything else, Aaron? Anything else from anybody?
We do have one question from Elena again.
Mm-hmm.
Just talking about the smell, sorry, we mentioned cologne, but we didn't talk about perfume for women. Is it slightly more acceptable or it's
No, I think it's really again, it's a generational thing of today we're just more aware of people with allergies, and so I think it's less and less and less acceptable. If you're going to a dance at the if you're going out to the club tonight, wear whatever you want to wear, but in a classroom situation or in a work situation, even here at the Marriott Library, where I work, we just got moved into cubicles while they're redoing the library, and I just had some essential oils, just vanilla. And I was told you can't have essential oils in your cubicle because other people are around. So, I mean, it's more of as time advances, we have less and less tolerance for that.
And people will notice that, you're
Mhm.
wearing too much. Well,
Mhm.
in your perspective, that might be a little bit of perfume or cologne, but from their perspective,
Mhm.
maybe like, oh, that's a lot of. So
Mhm.
they will probably, you know what I mean? Like if you're teaching a class, you don't want your students to remember you because of your perfume.
As you walk by,
Yeah, that's what they
Well,
will
that's all I got.
remember. Or like, oh, that's a strong smell, right? That's what they're gonna remember. Or
Yeah.
like a job interview or something like
just
that.
be neutral.
Yeah, be neutral is just safer.
Yeah.
Still be like professionally looking and stuff, but just
Mhm.
don't overdo it. But
Okay.
thanks,
Anything else?
everyone.
All right. I hope you got
Thank
some.
you.
This.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Yeah, thanks,
Mhm.
everyone. Have a good rest of the day.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.